All right, I'm going to first start with introducing our Slack before we do anything else, just so that you have enough time. There's an application called Slack, which is a real-time chat application for collaboration and for work. So if you already have it on your desktop, it's a desktop application that you can download, that you can use for this class and for joining the Women Take Makers Berlin community. So please do that. And if you don't want to download it, the website is slack.com. And if you didn't already join our channel, our Women Take Makers Berlin Slack group, you can get an invitation from slack.wtmberlin.com. So you enter your email address and click Get My Invite, and it sends you an invitation to your email address, which you can use to join our Slack group. Because we will kind of do all the communication over Slack and not over email. So for the next events, if you want to catch up with the content, with the assignments, with the homework, and submit them, everything is going to happen over Slack, and we won't email you like we did a couple of days ago. Did anybody receive an email from Meetup about this? You need to set up this and that. Please bring Chrome. Please raise your hands if you received the email. Okay, only a handful of people.
Sorry, maybe cut off the microphone because it's.
Oh, can I turn off the voiceover because it's double?
Or
it's echoing.
All right.
No, this one. This one.
Just.
This one.
No, it's because I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, I think now it will work. I just turned my microphone off. We're sharing the screen through Google Meet or Hangouts, whatever it's called. Sorry for the confusion. I think it's better right now, right? Cool. Sorry. So we'll do all the communication over Slack. So please join our Slack group. If you didn't get an invite, it's slack.wtmberlin.com, and you're going to get an invite if you give us your email address. We won't spam you at all. But yeah, so I have Slack set up already, and we have a channel called JS Crash Course. I already shared two sources that we're going to use throughout the course for learning JavaScript. It's one is called a modern JavaScript cheat sheet, which goes over the main properties of JavaScript. And then the other one is a book called You Don't Know JS. It's ironically named, but it's one of the best JavaScript books. And it's really laid out in very nice human terms that everybody can understand. So whenever you have time, please go through these resources and read through them. Now, I assume some of you wouldn't have received the email that I sent for setup. So don't worry if you didn't set up anything. The only thing that you're going to need is the Chrome browser today. We're only going to work with the Chrome browser. So if you have Chrome installed on your machine, then you're good to go. Does anybody not have Chrome installed? You don't have Chrome? You don't have Chrome? Okay. Anyone else? All right. I think it's google.com/Chrome. This is public service. This is your first entry to the best of the internet. To improve your life quality, using such a good browser helps a lot. But I mean, if you don't have Chrome, all the stuff that we're going to do will be applicable to any browser anyway, if you can find a way to initiate their developer console. And it's the easiest in Chrome. So if you have time, you have the internet, please download it and set it up. If you don't have it, then hopefully some of the instructors will help you. Now let's get to that part. Again, I'm Arman Amcalar. Although I have a G in my name, we don't pronounce it because that's a special character. I come from Turkey. I moved to Berlin 3 years ago, and I am currently serving as the head of software engineering at UNU GmbH. Now at UNU, we're building electric scooters like Vespa type scooters, but with batteries inside. So it's actually a really nice, sweet product, and we're also kind of proud to be doing that. And maybe you saw a couple of scooters around Berlin, the UNU scooters already. But if you haven't, please check them out. And we have a very nice team that we set up at UNU in the software engineering department. And we basically organize these events together. And I brought some members of my team together with me. And today they're going to help me out. In the coming days, in the next lectures, they will be giving the lecture. So we're kind of creating already a movement, a tradition where we scale out the instructor team. So I would first start by introducing the team that we have today here with us. I'm going to first start with Maria, who is also kind of the organizer from our side of this event as well. Maria is here with us today. She's going to help you out with all your problems. So if you have anything, just raise your hand, and any of the instructors, assistants here will come and help you out. But Maria is a very special one of them because she was a student last year in this course. So she pretty much started JavaScript with this course. And at the end of the course, I had a quota for hiring one intern out of the graduates. And we were very lucky to work with Maria for 6 months with her internship. Now you might imagine it's been more than 6 months since we had the last course, which was last year. But that already means that we went on and signed her full-time. And now she's been working as a JavaScript engineer with us for full-time. And I'm very, very proud of that achievement because we made it real in this course. And she's with us today. She's not teaching any courses yet this year, but hopefully next year she'll be heading up one of the lectures and will be contributing by creating more lectures as well. Now the second person is Celia Gomez. She is also working with us at UNU. Currently she is an intern. And as you might imagine, she also came through the Women Tech Makers Board and JavaScript Crash Course 2017. So she was a member of this meetup. She pretty much learned JavaScript here, right? And then we had another advanced version in the winter, and she also attended that and had an amazing performance. So we're also very lucky to work with her right now. And the idea that I'm trying to convey here is this is real. This is fun. This is a lot of fun, but in the end, it will really contribute to you. And if you want to take this further on, you can. And obviously, my goal is to hire more interns and future full-time team members out of this course, out of this very course. And hopefully, by the graduation event, you'll have enough knowledge and enough experience in developing JavaScript applications so that you can start applying for other jobs, or maybe we'll have some luck to work together. But obviously, there were, I guess, 2 or 3 more people who got jobs right after the JavaScript Crash Course last year with JavaScript, with the knowledge that they learned. So we're here to break all your prejudice or impressions of how hard programming is and how unachievable it is. So if you've thought that it's too hard for me, I can never understand what this magic is doing, we're here to break that. It's going to work, and you're going to be great coders. By the end of this 8 weeks, you'll be able to deploy your applications to a cloud server, potentially in Google Cloud, and scale it. It's a huge difference, and I can now say with confidence that we made it happen last year. It did work, and it's going to work with you as well if you just keep on doing the assignments. And this is the tricky part. We'll have assignments every week, and we will expect you to do them. And it will obviously require some of your personal time, but if you invest that personal time, the results will be great. We also have Anya with us today, and she is currently the front-end lead at UNU, and she also will help you out throughout the courses. And I guess she has a lecture. Yeah, about the front-end, obviously, about Vue.js, because one of the lectures will be about the front-end, and the rest will be about the back-end, and we're going to talk about what they actually mean in a couple of minutes. And then we have Voa, who is also really, we are really lucky to have him here today to help you out as a helping hand, because I want to make sure this is a welcoming event for everybody, that, if you have any questions, they will be answered. although we don't work with Boba, unfortunately, he was kind enough and nice enough to come and help us out today. And we have Michael. Now our history with Michael is a bit longer than all the rest. We were working together at UNU with Michael, and he was the front-end lead. And he's also an amazing front-end engineer, and he's really good with JavaScript. So I'm also very grateful for him being here today. And finally, we have Omar, who just recently joined UNU, again as a front-end engineer. And I think you also have a lecture, right?
Yes, async weeks.
Yeah, asynchronous programming with JavaScript. Omar will hopefully give that lecture. And so the thing is, we are here together as a team to basically share what we know with the community. And hopefully next year you'll be here as assistants, as instructors, and we'll reach even more people with Tech Makers Berlin. So thank you for enduring this introduction. I hope I'm not boring. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and ask. There are some rules, of course. The ground line, the baseline is we're here to learn, and there are no dumb questions ever. Please ask anything that you want. Just raise your hand, and one of the assistants will, fly over, because it's hard to walk around these things, but they'll fly over to you and try to answer your question and help you through the code. Because I'm gonna do a lot of live coding, and I will expect you to follow. And also, I'm recording my screen right now, so I will be sharing these over YouTube as well. And if you want to watch them again for the homework, to get some inspiration or to catch up with whatever you've lost during the or you have missed during the lectures, you'll be able to follow up with the videos. So I hope it will also work for you. All right, how does it sound so far? Good? Cool. This is an interactive event. Feel free to raise your hand and tell your thoughts, tell your ideas, and ask your questions. Although I don't have a microphone here today, I am speaking here, but it doesn't mean that only I will be speaking. I will ask you a lot of questions, and I will expect you to say something. It doesn't have to be an answer. Just, whatever you think about that. Just tell to me so that I can somehow customize the contents of what I'm telling, what I'm teaching throughout this event. Because the idea is to get almost everybody here programming. And, it's kind of a tough job. If you look at it, probably some people have previous programming experience. Do you please raise your hands if you have previous programming experience? Yeah, a couple of people have previous programming experience. Raise your hands if you're totally new to programming. Yeah, and basically the rest of the group is totally new, which is perfect. Hey, but it means that the diversity within this group in terms of experience is also huge. Now, I will cater for that. I will make sure I'm as clear as possible for newcomers and, not very boring for the more experienced people. But the idea is we also need your help. So whenever somebody sitting next to you has a question, please, if you know the answer, please try to help them as well. Because we also believe in peer learning. Like, you also have to learn together. We have to share. And, if you have one tiny bit of knowledge or experience, we ask you to share it with the people around you. This is how we're going to keep a kind of a balanced approach to the lectures. All right. Is there anything that I'm missing that I didn't cover? First of all, did I cover everybody who's the assistants? All right. Cool. Because last year I forgot one person. I was like, no, this is recorded in history. This cannot repeat. Cool. So, does everybody have Google set up? Google Chrome set up? Please raise your hands. All right. Now, please raise your hands if you still don't have Google Chrome. No? All right, perfect. Then that means we can start with the contents. But before that, I'm going to ask you a couple of more questions. Now, who have programmed JavaScript before? Okay. Yeah, a lot of hands. That's good. That's great. So who is familiar, who is not familiar with the concept of a variable? Please raise your hands. Yeah, not. Yeah, like raise your hands if you don't know what a variable is. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. That's great. And so raise your hands if you don't know what backend means. Backend. Yeah, 1, 2. Perfect. So maybe let's start with that definition. This is a web page that's open. That's Google Chrome's web page that lets you download it, right? Now, everything that you can see, touch here, and interact with, the buttons, the links, you know, when you go over the button, they change color, and you can scroll. The color changes when I hover over it. These are all called the front end. Whatever you can see, touch, feel on your phone as well, like you can literally touch, they are the front end. And whatever happens behind the scenes to make this work, you know, on Google servers to basically deliver this to you is called the backend. It's where the practically where most of the magic happens. Like when you call a cab with Uber or My Taxi, you know, you just tap a button in your phone, but somehow it's connected to the company, My Taxi, and the drivers learn where you want to go. They accept you as a customer, and they come to you. They know where you live. This is a little bit spooky, but yeah, they know where you live pretty much. But yeah, all of those happen in the background, right? You don't see it. You just tap a button and then taxi comes. Now, all that bits are happening in the backend. And this course, although it's a JavaScript course, it's a backend course. So we're going to see how those systems are built. And hopefully you're going to be able to build a similar system by the end of the 8 weeks. You'll be able to develop an application that will run in a cloud server somewhere. And by cloud, we mean someone else's computer. And your code will run there, and you know this magic will happen. And as a result, you'll see something in the browser screen. Now, generally, JavaScript is mostly used for the front end to build these applications, these front end applications, and even Slack, the messaging app that we're currently using, it's built with JavaScript. Skype, the latest version of Skype, is built with JavaScript. The code editor that we're going to use, Visual Studio Code, is built with JavaScript. So JavaScript is capable of building all of these things, and these are all called the front end. We're going to take a step back and introduce JavaScript as a backend language, because it's also very, very powerful and very strong in making this we call business logic, what happens behind the scenes, happen. Now, people usually use Java, Python, C, C++, Ruby on Rails as a backend language. And in fact, Node.js is also a backend environment. Have you ever heard of Node.js? Please raise your hands if you have. That's perfect. So that's what we're going to learn. And that's what we're going to be building our applications with. Because there's a huge, huge void in the Berlin job market about backend engineers who know Node.js. And hopefully we'll be contributing to that. And hopefully, if we follow up with an advanced course after this, you'll maybe be able to function as a full stack engineer. Raise your hands if you don't know what full stack means. 1, 2, 3, perfect. Full stack means backend and front end together. So usually people either do only backend or either do only front end, and full stack developers do both. And it's very hard. It requires really a lot of effort from you so that you can become a full stack developer. But currently, Maria and Celia are full stack developers. So, you know, whatever you throw at them, backend, front end, database, they can do it. And the idea is, in a couple of months, you can also get to this this level, and you'll be able to function as hopefully as a full stack engineer as well. All right, anybody bored so far? Raise your hand. It's totally okay if you're bored. Okay. Raise your hands and tell me about your expectations for this course. And if it were different when you first walked in through the door? Anybody? Please. Now, I'm not going to let this go. I will have at least 3 of you speak up about your expectations. Otherwise, we're going to stay here until morning. Please.
So the questions are hearing both of those stories, and I've dived into JavaScript before and got extremely intimidated.
Yeah.
And thought I was too stupid to learn this. And this is the reason why I'm here today, because I haven't given up yet.
Perfect.
So I want to learn it desperately because I know I need it. And my expectation to myself is to make it happen.
Yes, perfect. I hope we're going to contribute to that. Just so you know, JavaScript works everywhere. Like even in your fridges, in your TV, all of those devices can speak JavaScript. And this means, you know, it can run everywhere, but it's also approachable by, in fact, everybody. It's one of the easiest languages to learn, and the problem is the industry makes it really hard for newcomers. This is why we designed this course, to be welcoming to newcomers and to onboard you with not only with JavaScript, but also with programming, which is really similar to life. If you ever faced with life choices in your life, you'll find programming is actually pretty straightforward, and I'm here to prove that to you. So hopefully this will work for you. Someone else, please raise your hand. Nobody? Please.
Okay. I'm a designer, working as a designer, senior designer, and recently I realized that I want to make a new step in my career. Maybe not in my career, but in the way I'm thinking, because when you dive deeply into your field, you start understanding how things work in the background of what you are doing. That's why I started doing more and more, and I get integrated into my IT team. And now I want to be actually entitled and able to do it, not begging guys for tasks. Hey guys, can I help you to do those small things? But I really want to be helpful and useful there. That's why I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. And again, hopefully we'll be able to contribute to you as well. Anyone else? Raise your hands. We have time. Please, it's okay to talk. Please. Yeah. Yes. This is the difference that we want to make. There are a lot of online courses for teaching front-end JavaScript. I believe most of them are either hard to jump into or completely rubbish. But that's why I don't want to step in that direction, but in another direction with backend, because I think this is missing, and I hope to, you know, contribute also to the IT industry here in Berlin by creating backend engineers. And this is why we're tackling this as a backend course. Okay, one more person, because you were so hesitant to raise your hands up. I have to get this through, because you'll have to ask a lot of questions throughout the course. You better get used to it. Please raise your hand and tell me about your expectations and if we are able to meet them so far. Did you have no expectations at all? No, you're not allowed. No, basically, you're with us for every single lecture that we had so far. So,
that's the thing. So I didn't have the time to get along. So I'm so happy. I'm so happy now I have time.
Perfect. This time we're gonna make it.
And this time I'm gonna make it. So this time it's like it is the same thing. So I started and I was not able to. I haven't submitted any homeworks, nothing. Yeah. This time I have the time.
Perfect. But he doesn't count. Someone else, please.
I have already a bit of experience with web development and HTML5 and CSS and JavaScript, and I learned it by myself, and I want to see what is also possible with JavaScript.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the idea is I can safely say it here because this is a safer environment for everybody. This is not safe to say in front of people who are dealing with other languages, but I believe JavaScript is the second best language in the world, and it actually allows you to do everything. And by everything, I mean everything. I have an application that I did with JavaScript 100%, that lets you type with your brain signals. Seriously, it's on my Twitter. If you go to my Twitter profile, you have an EEG headset, electrodes, and everything JavaScript, and you can type just with your thoughts. It's possible with JavaScript, and that's why I'm dealing with JavaScript for over 20 years. But I'm still with JavaScript. I've developed code in over 15 languages so far, but I've never been happy with them. And hopefully this time, you will also have the chance to go deep with JavaScript and then make it a part of your life, because you can do anything with it. You can do Skype with it, right? Skype is used by millions of people, maybe over 1 billion people. It's JavaScript on the desktop and on the mobile as well. Every mobile Skype application is actually JavaScript. So you can build anything you want. So that's what we're gonna learn. Yes, it's Swift, the language from Apple. I think it's, from a language design, it's the best language, but unfortunately, your fridge doesn't speak Swift, and you cannot do browser applications with Swift. Therefore, I'm sticking with JavaScript until Swift also gets this capability. All right, this time for real, I'm gonna start. Are you ready? This was a warm-up. Are you ready?
Yes.
Cool. Let's start with, yeah, please sit down. Yeah, if you like, you can also sit on the chairs. Okay, let's start with the browser console, the developer console. There are multiple ways of opening it. There's usually a shortcut. On Macs, it's Command-Alt-I. I think on Windows, it's Control-Shift-I. And but there's another way. You can right-click on the page, anywhere on the page, on Google, and click Inspect. And it will give you a screen like this. Please follow me and do this, because we're gonna jump right into writing code from the first minute. So I expect you to open the browser console. Raise your hands if it doesn't work for you. That's fine. Browsers are weird. Chrome installations are also weird, so maybe you won't have it. It can be a separate screen. That's not a problem. Or it can be embedded in the browser. But it's okay if you cannot open it. We have a lot of assistants here who are going to come over and help you. Does everybody have the developer console open? Raise your hands if you don't have it open yet. If you don't, you can't open it. Yeah, please. So this is the default mode of operation. You'll raise your hand during the lecture, and somebody will see it and come over and help you, okay? So please don't worry. If you want to ask anything, please stop me and ask. Don't think like you're slowing down the whole class. You may never know who is struggling with the same problem. So I will tell you if it takes too long, and I will cut it short, but this has never happened in my life, ever. No questions were long to disturb other people. So feel free to ask questions, okay? All right, we inspected something. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the console. You see a tab here. Hello. You see a tab here called console. You click it, and it basically ends up in an empty screen. Please switch over to the console tab. All right. And again, if you cannot, please raise your hand, and Michael, Aya, Celia, Maria, Omar, or Wowa will come over and help you. Now, this is a very nice area. Basically, it gives you control over the whole web page, and you can do a lot of stuff with this. In fact, if you go to facebook.com, you don't have to follow me here, but if you go to facebook.com, and hopefully there are no embarrassing things on my feed, and open the browser console, it tells you to stop. This is a browser feature intended for developers if someone told you to hack someone's account, it's a scam, and don't fall for it. So we're already in developer territory. All right. Any other web page or even Facebook is fine, but it will annoy you with that that stop sign. But that's the thing. Open a new tab. Open the console, the developer console, and we're gonna start writing code there. All right. We can do a lot of stuff here. You can hack people's Facebook accounts. You can share some code with them and hack their accounts. In fact, anybody using Netflix? Okay, perfect. I have a little snippet, a little script that downloads your Netflix viewing history and saves them as CSV files. Like you can do a lot of stuff here. You just go to netflix.com and run that script, and it downloads your Netflix history from the beginning of time. And that means this gives you a lot of power. This gives you a lot of power to program the browser and the web pages. And we're going to start by creating a variable. Now let's come to the idea of a variable, what it is and why we use it. Now, programming is, in fact, mimicking life. Okay? Whatever you see in life, like a person is communicating with another person, right? They're talking. They're doing actions. They have some behavior. They have some features, like they have some hair, and although I don't, usually people have hair, and usually they have a color, a hair color. That's a property of a person, right? Well, in fact, the easiest way to program something is to model it after these facts in life. You know, create something like an object, like a person, give them some features, give them some behavior, and they will act on that behavior, okay? Let's pick up like a toy, a doll, baby doll, what do you call it? And you know, that's an object, right? And there are some electronic ones, you press their bellies and they speak, and that's an action. They have predefined actions to sing, maybe, when you push their bellies, and they do an action, right? That's an object doing an action. Now, this is a recurring pattern in programming. I'm going to talk more about objects and how you create them and how they act, but the fundamental that you need to understand is everything that's going to happen in programming will happen through interactions of different entities, different objects, different beings, okay? Now, I hope you by now know my name. I'm called Arman. And when you refer to me, you say, hey, Arman is doing this, right? Or right now I'm speaking, and you would say, Arman is speaking, right? You have a reference. And you can point to me by saying my name. Hopefully, when you talk about me to someone else, and when you say Arman, they will know who you're talking about, right? When you say, hey, I went to a lecture by Arman, I'm not famous, they won't know. But in the end, the idea is if they are somebody from this class, they will know who you are referring to, right? There is an idea of a reference, all right? I'm Arman. I could be named something else. My parents could name me something else, right? They didn't really have to name me Arman. It's not written in a book or something. In fact, in Turkey, my name and surname is unique. I'm a kind of a unique person. I'm me. But I could be called by any name. In fact, my family jokingly calls me many other names. And my colleagues also call me many other names. But they have a shared language, so when they call me A or Army, they know who they're referring to. Because there is the idea of a reference, right? We're exchanging references. Two people, when they're talking about a third subject, they talk about this reference. This is Arman. This is an apple, right? This is a red apple. Or, you know, this is my apple. In that case, the reference is my. So you have a label for every single thing in your life, right? If you can identify something, it has a label you call by name. Now in programming, obviously, we also have labels for everything. And obviously we call these labels variables. So if you have a number, and if you want to reference that number later, hey database, do you remember the number that I had that's kept over there? That's a label. That's kind of a variable. And in order to do anything useful, we'll be creating a lot of variables throughout the course, and we'll be functioning or acting on those variables. Okay? Does it kind of make sense what a variable is? I didn't read this definition anywhere. I just made it up. In fact, I just made it up here right now, right this second. But I hope it makes some sense what a variable is. It's a label. It's a reference to a being, to an entity. It could be an idea. It could be a number, jacket, person, whatever. But that label is called a variable. Okay? Now, let's get back to programming. This is an interactive console, and you can pretty much do anything here, but let's start with the easiest one, with math. Type 3 plus 5, and you'll already see the answer written down there, 8. And when you tap enter, you'll see the result as 8. All right? Are there any variables here? No, there are no variables here. What are these? These are numbers. These are the entities themselves. Okay? How do I define a variable? In JavaScript, I start with the keyword var. Var stands for variable. It's very straightforward. And then I type the label. I want to call this 3 because naming is hard and I'm not really that creative right now. I'm just going to call it 3. And I'll say equals the actual 3. All right? Now, when I tap enter, it will say undefined. Don't worry about that. We'll talk about it later. It doesn't mean anything. But this is how I define a variable. I define 3 as a variable. And if you type 3 and hit enter, you'll see what it refers to. This is a reference. I created a reference. I created a label, and I created a variable. All right? 3 is a variable. Now, I want to create a new variable called 5. How do I do that? Help me. Tell what I'm going to write. Yeah. 5 equals 5. All right. And if I type 5, I see it here in the console as well. All right. So I'm going to clear it. To clear the console, I use Command K in Mac. I don't know what it is, what the shortcut is in Windows, but you can right-click and say clear console, or here's a nice button. Control L also works to clear the console so that you have a bigger screen. Let me, in fact, make this full screen. Okay. Now I want to add 3 and 5 with the variables. I'm going to type 3 plus 5. And when I hit enter, I'm going to see the same thing. It's still 8, right? Because what I'm doing right now is I'm using my variables, which refer to the original values, and I'm slating them, right? This makes a lot of sense, right? Cool. Now I will come. Is everything clear so far? Please. Yeah. 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 Yes, exactly. If you refresh the page, the definitions will go away. But let's refresh the page. And in your screens, the console will also clear. And if you type 3 plus 5, you'll get unquote reference error. 3 is not defined because we just cleared the memory of the console. Okay? And hopefully the error message is kind of clear right now, what it means. Unquote reference error. Why does it say this? Because 3 is unknown in the system. It's not referring to anything right now, right? So, sorry. So So kind of the browser is trying to help you with these errors. But obviously, if you hit the up arrow, even after the refresh, it will remember your history that you typed. So I can just go up, var 3, var 5, and then 3 plus 5. The up arrow functions as your history, and it brings the history back. And now you can type all of those things again. So hopefully you don't, forget anything. Okay. Now, raise your hands if you have any questions so far. No? Again, it's okay to ask questions, to not know. Perfect. So in JavaScript, there are 3 ways of defining a variable. Actually, there are 4, but let's for now say there are 3. One is starting with var 5. The other one is starting with let 4 equals 4. And the other one is starting with const 6 equals 6. All right. And then you can, of course, do 4 plus 6, and it's going to be 10. Throughout the course, we'll be using lets and const, and we're going to talk about that in the next lecture. They are a little bit more advanced ways of creating variables, but for our demo today, if you want to redeclare that variable, let's say we said let 4 equals 4. If I want to type let 4 equals 4, again, it will give me an error. Identifier 4 has already been declared. This is why today we're not going to use let and const, because if you do this with var 3 equals 3, it will work. In order not to deal with these type of errors, which forces you to come up with new names for your variables, we're going to stick with var, which is a little bit more flexible in JavaScript. But as of last year or 2 years, it's kind of a bad practice to use var. We're just using it for the demo purposes, and we're not going to be using it for any, we're only using it for today. All right. Now, I will ask you to go to Sources tab from the console. And on the left, you're going to see a menu, and you'll see snippets. Click snippets. It will give you kind of like a scratchpad to write more code and execute it freely. Like this, you'll have multiple lines that you can work with, and that's what we're gonna use. In fact, this is my Netflix history script that goes over your Netflix history and downloads it. Okay, create a new snippet, please. Sources is a tab next to the console. So raise your hands, and an assistant will come and help. Please utilize them. We also want this to be a fun activity for them. They are here for you, so please utilize them. Go to the Sources tab and create a new snippet. I created a new snippet called test. You can name it whatever you want. Okay, let's type the same thing here. Var 3 equals 3, var 5 equals 5, and 3 plus 5. There is a run button here, run snippet, or command enter on Mac. I hope it's control enter on Windows, which lets you run this piece of code, and you will see the results in the console. Okay? I'm going to create 6 as well. And when I type 3 plus 6, I got an error because I had declared it as let's before. When I type 3 plus 6, I will get the result there, which is 9. All right. Did everybody follow me so far? Please raise your hands. Only a couple of people. Sorry? Yeah. All right. Raise your hands if you didn't follow me so far. Like if you didn't type these in your browser, and I will ask the assistants and come and help you make it. There's another hand over there. Yeah. Now it's very important to get these basics done before we move on. So make sure you have these. There's a hand over there. Boba. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to go on with the definition of function. Okay? Please, somebody raise your hand and tell me what a function is. It's okay. That doesn't have to be a right answer. Please.
Function is a piece of code that does something for you.
A function is a piece of code that does something for you. That's perfect. That's a great definition. Any other definitions out there? Please raise your hand and tell me what a function is. It also can be the function that you remember from mathematics, because we also had this topic in math, right? Raise your hand and tell me what a function is. Anybody? No? Please. An equation. Yes, perfect. What does an equation have? An equation has variables and, whatever. Like, is there anything else in an equation? What makes it an equation? Yeah, an equation is something that has variables, but it also has hopefully some output, right? It's basically kind of like a recipe to act on those variables. So you give it some variables and hopefully it does something for you. Like, I don't know, electromagnetism or something, which is really hard. But that's, those are equations. There are some unknowns, some variables that could be anything, and that can take any value, right? That is the most important thing. The variables in functions can take any value, but the operation is the same. The functions define an operation on those values and give you a result, return you a result. This is one of the most important characteristics of a function. Now, in fact, addition is a function. So we are actually going to define addition as a function so that we don't have to type these all the time. We're going to define the operation once, and we're going to be able to use it multiple times. Okay? Now let's see how we do that in JavaScript. I start with the keyword function, and I type add because I want to name this add, the add function. Okay? Now let's say we want to add two numbers, which means this function should take two parameters. It's called parameters or arguments. There are two names, and it's like 50% of the population claim it's parameters, 50% of the population claims it's called arguments. We couldn't agree what it's called. It's called either arguments or parameters. Each function has arguments. This is going to have two of them, the first operand and the second operand. So the first number that I want to add and the second number that I want to add. Okay? Let's say, just for now, op1 and op2. Now I write them in parentheses. I started with function. I then typed the name of the function, and then I put some parentheses marks, and in those parentheses I wrote op1, comma, op2. We use comma to separate the arguments. Now we could have many more, but let's start with 2, all right? After writing these, I type curly brackets. That ugly shape that probably you never had to use in your life so far, which is going to be your best friend from now on. So better get used to it. Yes, exactly. I don't know. It's fine. The best way to do them is to get an English keyboard, because in an English layout they are the square brackets are on the keyboard, and if you use Shift on the keyboard for the square brackets, you get the curly brackets. Huh? You need help? Anybody free? Yeah. All right. Okay. Now, what am I going to type here? This is an addition. We did an addition before here, right? We typed something and they got the result. What should I type here to define this operation? Anybody? Please. Return. Okay. And then? Yes. OP1 plus OP2. Yeah, it's that simple actually. In fact, I will also be fine with an answer OP1 plus OP2 because that's what we did so far. 3 plus 5, 3 plus 6, that's what we did, right? But the last part, last characteristic of a function is that it is doing something and it's giving you back something. And that's called the return value. And we say this function returns the result of the operation. And this is basically as simple as this. And now, going onwards, you can type add 3, 5. Add open parentheses, 3, 5, close parentheses. It's automatically closed for you. If you run this, you're going to see the result. 8. Okay? Let's not use variables, but real numbers, like 2,456 and minus 912. Okay? And run this. It's still going to give me the right answer. Hopefully that's the right answer. 1,544. If JavaScript is implemented correctly, which is really tricky. Yes. Let's try this. Adding 2,456.3 minus 912.3. Let's make these simpler. Let's make this 6 and this 4. What is the result of this operation? Tell me the result of this operation. 2? Yes, it's 2. When we go for bigger numbers, previously this was 1,544, right? But when I run it, I get 1,544.00000 something 2. Now this is very peculiar. Most of the programming languages don't know math. Most of the programming languages have no idea, no notion of what math is. Why is that? Programming languages are for humans to consume and to understand. What they do is they take your input, they take what you type, and convert it to something that the machines can understand. What does the machines understand? What do the machines understand? The machines understand zeros and ones. Every single thing that you have is converted. All these names, add OP1, OP2, return OP1, OP2, 3, 5, these numbers 0.3. They are all converted into zeros and ones. And there in that conversion, some stuff get lost in translation. And our math that we know does not apply to machines. That's why we have this error. If you want to subtract or add these numbers, you get this, this error here. So don't expect too much from a machine, okay? It's just, it can do only so much for you. It can read your mind, but it cannot subtract two numbers properly. All right, let's move on. I want to write a new function to subtract these values, or subtract two values. All right, function. What should I type next? What should the name be? Subtract. What comes next? Parentheses. What comes next? Arguments. What am I going to type? What do I want to type? OP3 and OP4. Where is OP1 and OP2? Yeah, I can also use that. So, just so you know, there are two hard things in computer science. The first one is naming things. The second one is something called cache invalidation. It's basically impossible to get these things right. You know, it's very, very hard to name arguments, functions, parameters, variables. It's very hard. So do your best. Try to be as clear as possible. Try not to use the shortcuts that I use, like call this operand 1, call the other one operand 2. The extra characters that you type here right now will save a lot of lives in the next years when another developer looks at this code and tries to understand what you want to achieve. Because again, we write code for humans to understand and to consume. If we were aiming for the machines, we would be writing zeros and ones. Actually, this is really hard for a machine to understand. There is at least 2 or 3 orders of magnitude difference with the machine code zeros and ones and with the code that we're writing in terms of speed. This is much, much slower to understand and execute for a machine. So this is only for humans, so please be respectful for your future colleagues. Always code like the person who's going to read your code is a psychopath who will come and find you if they don't understand your code. Okay? So I type return operand 1, and what comes next? Minus. What comes next? Operand 2. All right. And then let's type subtract 0, let's see, 0, comma 15. Okay? And let's run this. Command enter or control enter. And you're going to see the result. It's minus 15. Okay? It works. Really simple, straightforward. Please.
What is the meaning of this?
Curly bracket.
And how do you know, like, which order?
Perfect. What is the meaning of the curly bracket and how do you know in which order to put them? The order, there are the rules. It's called the syntax. It's followed, you know, it starts with a function, goes on with the name, with regular parentheses to indicate the arguments, even if you have no arguments, and then curly brackets. Because curly brackets denote the scope, denote the responsibility area for that function. Everything that you put inside the curly brackets will be the code or the properties of that function. So you're saying, hey, this is where you start with opening curly brackets, you write your code, and then you put a closing brackets, and you indicate this is where you stop. This is how we were able to define 2 different functions. We said we define function add, close and open its scope, execute it, and then define function subtract, and again, open and close the curly brackets. All right? Any questions so far? Raise your hands if you feel lost. And it's totally okay. Again, nobody? So everybody's on track? Kind of? Cool. Again, you will have hopefully more chance to look at the video recording afterwards and practice while you're doing the homework. And we have a lot to cover today still. We have like 10 minutes before the break. Then we're going to have a 15-minute break, and then we're going to have the second part of the lecture. So before, please. Yes, the question is, why is it repeating it? Why is it not repeating it everything that we write so far, but only giving the result of the last expression? And each line is called kind of an expression. It's because this is Scratchpad. It's for convenience, so it is designed to allow you to experiment, and it assumes that whatever you write last is the one that you want the output of, and just ignores the rest. Like, it still executes those, but doesn't give you an output, but just prints the output at the end. Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. Then why are we talking? There must be a need for conversation, right? Please make it public so that all the information that we create is also public. Again, if you have some questions, some doubts in your mind, it's very likely that some other person in the room shares those, and they will benefit from your ideas, from hearing the same is shared by another person. So please tell me. Yes? Why am I using the sources tab and not the console? To be able to write multiple lines. Because I'm going to write a function that takes several lines. It's harder to do in the console. And kind of when you tap the up arrow, the console brings the history. But I just don't want that. I want to go up when I tap up. So that's why I switched to the sources tab. Please. Yes, that's a good point. Let's first talk about that. Now, there is a newer version of JavaScript. I say newer, but it came out like 3 years ago. That kind of changed the syntax a little bit and made it a little bit easier for people to use. So now let's create another function called multiplication. Okay. This time I'm gonna treat functions as variables. Beforehand, they were expressions. Now they're going to be variables. If you're interested in why this is called an expression versus a variable, read it online. Google will help you. If not, please, let's talk on Slack. But I'm going to start with the definition of var because it's a variable. Var multiplication equals, I'm going to write a function. Now, normally I could start with the function keyword. But again, there is a simpler way of doing stuff in the new syntax, so let's type that. I omit the function syntax because everybody knows this is going to be a function, right? So I don't need to type function. But I need to define the arguments that it's going to take. So I'm using the parentheses, open parentheses, and I'm going to say op1, comma, op2, and close parentheses. I defined the arguments. Now comes a special operator called fat arrow. It's a very weird name, but it's basically an equal sign and a greater than sign. It's called a fat arrow, which is extremely weird, and I hope they change it. I don't like calling arrows fat. I think they don't deserve it. But then, what is the multiplication operation? What do I need to type in order to have multiplication? Yeah, curly brackets. But what is the actual operation? op1, asterisk, op2. Yes, and I'm going to directly type that. op1, asterisk op2. Now I don't need the curly brackets anymore. I don't need the return. This is called a one-line function or a one-liner. And yes, if you have more stuff inside, if you have more than one line, you still need to use the curly bracket and the return. But for a single line, you don't. And then you can call this multiplication, 5. Yes. Exactly. If you have one line, you don't need to write return. In fact, it's a syntax error. You cannot write return there on this line. But if you have more than one line, you have to write return. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So multiplication 5, 3, it's going to be 15. So this works. This is simpler than...
Question.
Yeah, please.
What about semicolons?
What about semicolons? I don't use them because there's only one single type of error you can make if you're not using semicolons. And normally the tools that we use, the development environments, already prevent you to do that mistake. They warn you against that mistake. So it's more or less safe. Obviously, it's not safe here. If I'm not too careful, I can run into such an issue. But it's not really common that you will run into an error. So it's okay to omit the semicolons. But this is a huge discussion in the JavaScript community. Again, half of the population says we have to have semicolons at the end of every single line, and the other half says no, we don't really need to. So why do we clutter it? I follow the second people.
What's the arrow that you were talking about?
The fat arrow?
No, the arrow.
The error. Yeah, error. Sorry.
If you don't use
so it's also very hard to talk about it right now with our current level of knowledge. It's again something that you're never going to run into in this course.
But what is it?
What is it?
just short.
Yes, shortly. Since you don't put semicolons, sometimes JavaScript parser thinks that 2 lines are in fact one single line. That is a continuation. That whatever you write on the second line is actually the same if you put it at the end of the first line. But you say, no, it's not like that. This is actually a separate line. Please treat it as a separate line. So we use semicolon to clearly identify the end of each line. But if you omit it, sometimes it doesn't know. On some certain occasions, it's confused and thinks it's a single line, and that leads to any type of error, any weird error in your code. But again, you're never going to run into that. Yes, in the end, it's more safe to use semicolons. But it's okay. I have a very bad example for this. But the thing is, you'll write a lot of code and a lot of lines. All right. If you're not going to be affected by that, why bother? You're going to write 1 million lines in your life and a lot more. I'm trying to save you from 1 million characters that you have to type. And
basically, when you write the code without, if eventually you reach the moment that you need,
exactly, that's what you always do. Like you write it without semicolons, and when you specifically need it at that time, you just put a semicolon only once where it's required. The idea is you should keep programming as simple as possible. Don't do anything that's not necessary, because people will read this thing. And even now, we wrote 21 lines. Today, we wrote 21 lines. We're just getting started. This gets really, really ugly and hard for your colleagues to read. And we're trying to make it as concise as possible. That's why we have this new syntax of creating functions that don't mention the function keyword, because it's much more simpler to read as a single line. If you compare it to this is much simpler to read and write. Okay, any other questions? Cool. In the Second part, we're going to talk about objects, classes, and interactions between different objects. Okay? Now we have 15 minutes break. Let's keep it at 10 minutes because I'm sure it will take 5 minutes to get back into our seats. Let's be sharp about it. In 15 minutes, we're going to start. So in fact, I received a couple of questions on the break that I want to talk about. And the first thing that I want to talk about is what we're going to do. You know, why are we having this course? Besides learning JavaScript and turning you into developers, what are we going to build? The idea is we're going to build backend applications, cloud applications that do a certain business. Like an example from last year was a school grading system. You know, an online application for school students and teachers to log into, and that's, you know, for the students to see their grades, to see their marks, and for the teachers to give them the marks for exams. Another example was a game, something like a role-playing game, and an online RPG game that you could play, in fact, multiplayer. Another example was finding free toilets around Berlin, which is really, really useful, in fact. And there was a front end for it as well that actually really works. With a database, with location, it gets your location from your phone or from your browser, shows you on a map, and shows the free toilets around you that you can use. So we're going to be building applications of this sort. In fact, you are going to be building applications. Every one of you are required to build an application for the graduation event. If you want to be called graduated, and if you want to get a graduation certificate from Women Tech Makers Berlin JavaScript class, you need to attend at least 80% of the classes here, and also do a demo on the graduation day with your project. So we will ask you and help you build real-life applications like the ones that I have cited so far. So whatever you have in mind, you know, whatever application that you wanted to create so far, we probably be able to do a very small version of it, a mini version of that application. All right? So that is the goal. That's what we're going to start with. And today there's going to be a homework for next week. And we will ask you to create GitHub accounts, learn how to use GitHub, and put your work on GitHub and submit as a homework during the week so that the teaching assistants or myself or other instructors are able to look into your code and comment and help you with your questions. So if you do this before the next lecture, like on the weekend, Monday, hopefully not Tuesday, we will have enough time to help you with your problems and help you get set up along the way to your real application. And also in the lectures, we're going to be building one small application like meetup.com. And in fact, we're going to start programming for it right now. And therefore, the homeworks will be building on top of the same idea. So it's better if you find an idea right now, or like around these days, we can also help with the ideas. We can talk over Slack and we can ideate about those. It's best if you come up with your idea and if you start the homework with that in mind. Because every homework will build on top of the previous one. And if you follow naturally, by the end of the 8th, you already have a working application that you can put to the cloud and scale as a backend application. And hopefully, right now, since we have this front-end lecture as well, maybe you're also going to be able to put it on the front end as well in the browser. So hopefully that's going to work. It worked last year, so I'm very, very positive that we're going to be able to make it work again. All right, so this is github.com. This is already shared in the previous email that I sent out, but I'm going to send it out again to the meetup attendees to set up. And I'm also going to write it on Slack. So if you join Slack, you'll be able to see what you're required to do for next week. We will ask you to set up Node.js, MongoDB, and Visual Studio Code on your computers for next week, so that we don't waste time with setup and installation processes, but get right away started with the actual lecture. So make sure to follow the instructions there, as well as doing your homeworks. There are also a couple of stickers outside, like these. Euro staff was kind enough to print these for us. It's a nice memory for this event. So I'm also very proud that we're doing such things that you can actually hold in your hand. So take those and put it somewhere in your own lives. And yeah, make it a part of your life. Maybe put it on your laptop so that you show that you're part of this JavaScript initiative. Any other questions before we move on? Please raise your hand if you want to discuss something. Any questions? No? Please. Retro stories on GitHub? No, they're going to be public, so everybody can see them. And can also offer code for help. Any other questions? Please. It's going to be a personal project. Of course, if you want to do it with a group member, that's fine. But I encourage you to do a solo project so that you get your hand deep down with every aspect of software engineering of the work. Any other questions? No? Okay. Is there one? No? Okay. Then I'm going to start by creating some objects. I'm just continuing on this Scratchpad that I created. Now, we talked about references, we talked about labels. Let's start with Armand as a label, and let's create a person object that resembles a person, like Armand. Okay? So I start with the label, var Armand is a variable, equals. Now there is again a special syntax. This time we start with the curly brackets, open and close. And this gives you an object. All right. If you run this, you're still going to see the last iteration because we didn't do anything yet. But let me put a console log Armand here. And you're going to see that it logs the object to the browser window. Now I used some special keyword console.log, which is a function that I use to print something on the screen, print a value on the screen. And I put Armand as the first argument to that, as the first parameter to that. It's very, very, very strange. When you use it like this, it's called a parameter. When you use it inside the function, it's called an argument. Now Armand here is a parameter, or in this multiplication, 5 is a parameter, OP1 is an argument. But anyway, this is just semantics. So I use console.log to print the value of Armand, which is currently an empty object. There are no properties inside. Just ignore this. This is a private property, like underscore underscore proto underscore underscore. But what feature, what characteristic do I have? I have a name, right? Every person has a name. Let's start with that. I say name, colon, and in quotes, Armand. So name is currently a property. It's called a property. Name is a property of Armand. All right? I define Armand as an object, and I gave it a name. And the name is, in quotes, Armand, which is my kind of my real name. The reason it's in quotes is because this is called a string. This is a piece of text, and a piece of text is called string in programming languages. Now, when I run this, again, Command Enter or Control Enter, when I run this, you will see that it prints the object to the console. You can open it further and see its properties, and Arman is already there. Okay? Now I want to add another one, another property, and let's call it age. I'm 34 years old, so age, colon, 34. This time there are no quotes around it. Why are there no quotes around 34? Because that's a number. That's not a string. That's not text. That's number that I can add to other numbers. Because, you know, when I get older, that's going to increase one by one. It cannot be text. It has to be a number in order to add to the things, right? And when I hit Control Enter, now you see the object logged, Arman and age 34. So now we have an object that has properties. Okay? Does it make sense? Now, if I can turn this into a template somewhat, I can create multiple other objects that have the same structure, right? Because there are a lot of different people also in this room. If I can create a template out of this object that has a name and an age, okay? That means I can represent more people in the room. One way to do that is to write multiple objects like this, which are sort of arbitrary. Let me do one. Let's do Anna. I declare Anna as a new object, just like I did with Arman. And type name, call it Anna, and type age, call it 30. Okay, now this is another object. Console log Arman, console log Anna. When I run this, let me clear the console. When I run this, I'm going to see two different objects logged to the console. Okay, because I had two expressions. Specifically, I told to log to the console. The first one is Arman and the second one is Anna. All right. Now this is great. I have two different objects. Okay. But how do I define that a person has to have a name? Tell me. It's fine. Yes. Like objects are objects, and Arman and Anna here, the small ones are the labels we call them. We just happen to call the first object Arman and the second object Anna. In fact, let me show you something. So if I type Arman in the console, I'm gonna get this. Okay. Now let me create a new variable var army equals Arman. All right. Now when I type army, I'm still going to get the same object. You can check if they're equal. Army equals, equals, equals. Like just make sure these are really, really equal. All right. Arman, and it's true. These are actually equal to each other. That's why I say these are just labels. The object there is a thing on its own, but we can have many labels pointing to that object. Now, what I want to make sure is, I want to make sure there's a standard to these objects. And in that standard, the objects have a name and an age property. Okay? Do you see anything in the code that will ensure this? Like, what if, can somebody now create another object that doesn't have a name, or that has a surname instead of a name? You know, what happens if I go and type var Omar equals a new object, name Omar, and I don't know, surname Abinega. What is it? This is an object, right? Is this an okay object for me, for my purposes right now? It passes as an object, but it doesn't conform to my previous objects. My previous objects had a name and an age. And I'm free to write whatever property I want into these objects. So in fact, there are no clear structure. There is no type of this object. This is just an object, which means, you know, it's very, very generic. So in fact, this is therefore very hard to program around. You cannot have very generic structures like these. You want a little bit more standards, a little bit more structure, a little bit more taxonomy and classification. Okay? Like, we have billions of types of animals in the world, in the animal kingdom, right? Do we call all of them animals? Like, they're just some objects. An object that climbs a tree, and another object that goes under the ground. No, right? They all have names. In fact, there's a science behind it that does the taxonomy of all these individual species, right? So there's a bear, or there's a worm. There are multiple types of worms that are sharing the same background. There's a dog, there's a cat. When we see a dog and a cat, we can differentiate them, right? We know that this is a dog and this is a cat. A lot of people have cats. Cats have names as well. They have labels. You can assign multiple labels to the same cat, right? You can call the same cat with multiple names. That's fine, that's allowed. But at least you know what's a cat and what's a dog. Although sometimes they confuse themselves and think they are dogs or cats, and vice versa. We at least know what is a cat and what's a dog. Here in this case, so far we don't know. These are just objects. As humans, when we look at it, we can say, yeah, this is like a person object. Right? This represents a human being, a person. But the computer, of course, doesn't know it. Now, there is a way to tell the computer this taxonomy. This is called classification in biology. And this is where the name derives from. And the name that I'm referring to is class. So there's a concept of a class in programming, which is a standard template that you use to create objects, to create new objects, so that the computer knows what you're talking about. Okay? Now let's create I'm going to comment these lines out. I do that by hitting Command/, and I guess on Windows it's Control/, or you just put 2 slashes at the start of the line, so that when you execute this code, it doesn't give out anything. So I'm going to create a person class. I'm going to define a person class, all right? And then I'm going to create multiple instances from that person class, so that I will know that I will always have those properties defined in the standard, and there's no way to go and define arbitrary properties like I did with Omar. Omar doesn't have an age, but it has a surname. So therefore, this object doesn't conform to any standard, and it's hard to work with for me. So I start with the keyword class, and I type person, because I want this to be called a person class. It's a template to create individual persons. Again, I put the curly brackets. Yes, that's a good point. I use the capital case here, and I use P as a capital P to differentiate classes and regular variables. Now, classes are also variables, but when we look at the code, it's easier to reason to directly see which one is a variable and which one is a class, and because sometimes they are used together. So in order to differentiate them, I start with a capital letter, P in this case. Yeah. All right, so let's run this, and when I type person in the console, I get a class logged, and it currently has no properties, all right? But even if it doesn't have any properties, I can go and instantiate a new person, var Arman equals new person, all right? And I put parentheses, again, regular parentheses, because this is also, in fact, a function. Now, this is a little bit tricky, but just know that I put parentheses after the class name to instantiate a new copy. Now, when I run this, I'm going to get an error. Probably you're also going to get the same error. Identifier person has already been declared. The thing is, you cannot declare the same class twice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh the page, clear the console, and rewrite this in a way that it's okay to run multiple times. And that is, I'm going to call this, because every class is also a variable, I'm going to call this var person equals class. Okay? Now you can run this multiple times. And now let's do console log Arman. Okay. Let's open the previous console log. Now I have the first declaration of Arman here as a regular object. Okay? Then I'm logging that here, console log Arman. And at the bottom I have a person class that I have defined. And I kind of redefined Arman as a new person and log that. All right? I'm going to run this code and let's inspect the output. I run it, and first I get an object that has two properties: name, Arman, and age, 34. It's just a regular object. And on the second line, what do I get? What do you see on the second line? Tell me. Raise your hands and tell me. Don't be shy. There are no right or wrong answers. Just tell me what you see on the second line. On the second line. We see person, right? Is it we see person? That's an acceptable answer. We see person. You know, it's as easy as that. I told you, programming is actually very approachable, very simple. There are no trick questions that I'm asking. I'm just asking what you see here. And you see a person, right? It's an empty object. Because it doesn't have any name or an age. Great. It's an empty object, but more specifically, it's an empty person. Now that's a little bit harsh on me. But yeah. Indeed, the thing to note here is the second one already knows that it's a person. Okay? The first one is just a regular object. It could be any object, it could have any field. The second one already knows this is a person instance. This is really important because we're going to build a lot of classes and we're going to build a lot of interactions of those classes. When we do that, we have to know what we're interacting with. We just cannot use random objects or generic objects. We have to define templates because we're going to define interactions as well as templates in those objects. All right, so I can create a new person already. Now let's give it a name. The idea is I created a person. There's another word in English for that, and it's called question or for the assistants. Is the question or a help? All right. Any? Can you help here? Do you have a question? Yes. No, there is another student here. Yeah, just go over. Please tell me. Yeah. So there is no difference between a single quote and a double quote. For brevity, since they are the same, again, in order to be more concise, I use the single quote because it has less pixels on the screen. That's fine. The browser sometimes uses double quotes. In programming, we use single quotes. They both function the same. Okay, now, I created a person, right? In other words, I constructed a person. There is a special keyword in programming called a constructor function that you use inside classes, which gets called when you try to construct a new object. Now let's try to keep the noise level a little bit down. I'm making it to be a little bit calmer. Did you hear what I said last? There is a special function called the constructor function in every class that gets called whenever I try to create a new copy of it. Okay? And I define it by writing constructor. It's a regular function. In the class, you type constructor, put parentheses, and put curly brackets. And it will be a valid function that's going to be called whenever I run this code. How do I know if it's going to be called? Let's type console log hello world here. I have been just created. And when you run this, you will see that the constructor function is getting called. Because it already prints hello world, I have been just created. Okay? Which means whenever I'm instantiating a new person, this constructor function is being called. Now, I want this person to have a name, okay? And I want to define that name when I create that person. This is a nice, nice relation to life. When you have a newborn, the first thing you do is you give them a name, right? You start calling them something. So it's just apt or okay to define the name whenever you create or construct that person. This is a regular function. It can take some parameters. Let's say it currently requires name argument. All right. Let's update the message. Hello world, I am, comma, name. When I run this, what am I going to see? Currently, when I run this, what am I going to see? Tell me. Raise your hand and tell me. What am I going to see?
You're going to see an error.
I'm going to see an error.
Because you don't have the name defined.
Because I didn't define the name yet. Okay. Any other ideas? What am I going to see when I run this? An error. Let's run it. I see hello world, I am undefined. Now I didn't really get an error, but I'm at an existential crisis. Hello world, I'm undefined. Let's help this person. How am I going to fix this? What do I need to do in order to fix this? Just shoot ideas. Please raise your hand and shoot ideas. Tell me. Use Omar or Anna. Not yet. I'm currently working on the Arman object, and I want Arman to say his name. How can I fix this, please? Exactly. I pass the parameter to the person object, like this. New person. And I type the name in the parentheses. And when I run this, it finally says, hello world, I'm Arman. Okay? Now it knows itself. Kind of. Because still there's a problem here. Now let's say I want to get the name of this object back after I create it. How do I do that? I'm going to learn what the name of this object is. Anybody? Just raise your hand and give me anything. The question is, how do I get the name of this person that I just created? On the screen, I see that it's Arman. That's fine. But let's say in a year, I want to celebrate his birthday, and I still need the name of this person. How am I going to get it? I need to type something in the console to get the name of this person. What am I going to type? Yes, perfect. Let's do it. Arman.name. It's undefined. We use dots to access properties of objects. Okay? In fact, I have defined Anna and Omar previously. So Anna is here, Omar is here. If I type Anna.name, I'm gonna get her name. If I type Omar.name, I'm gonna get Omar's name. Why can I not get Arman's name? Please. Tell me again, I can hear you. Do you have to define a constructor? Yes, this is missing. The constructor currently takes the name and prints it to the console, right? But it doesn't save. There is no record of it. I didn't save it. And therefore, I need another mechanism to save this name for future use. Now, there is a special object in each class, in each function of each class, that refers to that instance that you create. And it's called this, like this, pointing to itself. And I say this.name equals name. All right? What this does is it saves that property that's incoming as an internal property of that class. So what it does is, from now on, I'm going to be able to access Arman's name. Whenever I ask for it by saying Arman.name, I'll be able to access the name because I saved it there. Again, this is a reference to self. In some programming languages, it's also called self. In some other programming languages like JavaScript, it's called this. It's pointing to you as the object. So I say define a new property on this object called name and save what's coming through the constructor object, the constructor function. All right? When I run this, now you see on the log, I have person but also name next to it. Let's remove this line just to demonstrate what it was like before. And let's run this. You see person was empty. I had the name but person was empty. Now I enable this line and run it again. And this time you see that person has a name property. So I was able to save that property to the person object. Okay? Now name from now on is a standard property of the person object. You have to pass it, and if you pass it, it will save it for you for future use. Okay? Let's delete this console log, hello world, I am something. And let's add age. Because, again, the previous Arman had an age, the current one doesn't have an age. What am I going to do if I need to add age as well? Tell me. Raise your hands, please. Add age to the constructor as a second argument, and then type this dot age equals age. This is how you save the second parameter as well to the instance. We call the objects that we create through these classes instances. And also add 34 as the second parameter to the person call. And I'm also logging that Arman as well. When I run this, you finally see that I both have age and name in the previous object and in the new object as well. So I was able to create a new person with name and age. Okay? Does it make sense? Are you able to follow so far? Cool. Because now things are going to get interesting. Hopefully. First, tell me how I create Omar in this new format. Var Omar equals new person, in parentheses, in quotes, Omar, and 30. And let's also print Omar. When I run this code, now you see the first one that I print is Arman, and the second one that I print is Omar. And the browser already knows these are persons. Okay? This is really, really important. Now, we just defined properties on these objects, name and age, but we don't really do anything with them. Okay? So these are like stationary objects that cannot do anything, that cannot do any action. Let's add some behavior. These are called properties. Let's add some behavior to these person objects. Like, for example, they should be able to speak for themselves, right? They should at least be able to say their names. Okay? How am I going to do that? I'm going to add a new behavior. I'm going to add a new behavior to this person class so that each person instance are able to say their name. Okay? This is done by using something called methods. Now, constructor is a method, which means it's a function inside the class. It's a function that belongs to a class. It's not a function that's out there. It's a function that belongs to the class. All right? This is called a method. I'm going to create a new method called sayName. And the syntax is very similar to the constructor function. I write sayName, put parentheses. This time I don't really need any arguments for it, because I'm just going to say, hey, you over there, please say your name, and that object will just say its name. And for now, let's write console.log inside to print the name. What am I going to type here? If I want to make this person say their name, what should I type here inside the sayName method? Raise your hand and tell me, please. Yeah? No, this is already a method inside the object. So how I call it is by typing arman.sayName. All right? So it already knows who they are. So what am I going to put here? My name is, yeah. That's perfect. That's a great, great start. My name is, mein Name ist. My German, by the way, is horrible. I suck at German. Sorry. This is the extent of my German. My Name ist. I can say that. What am I going to type next? This dot name. Why do I type this dot name? Because this is already, I know what this is. This is me, and I know name is a property of myself. So I say, my name is this dot name. This points to me, and I had already recorded name here previously in the constructor. Okay, I already know by now what my name is, and I say this dot name. Again, in other languages, this is self dot name, which is almost like my self name or my name. You can think about it this way. So I say this dot name. All right. And here, instead of these, let's say Arman dot say name, and let's run this. And it's gonna print my name is Arman. Okay. Now, how do I get Omar's name? Tell me. Omar dot name. That is Omar's actual name, but I want him to greet himself. Omar dot say name. Yes. That's what I use to get his greeting along with his name. Omar dot say name. Alright? When I run this code, I see my name is Arman and my name is Omar. Alright? Sorry? It doesn't recognize name. Maybe you didn't put name in the argument list. Or maybe there's a typo. Yeah. Cool. Any questions so far? Please. Why don't we need a space after my name is? It's the property of this console log. Whenever you use multiple parameters for it, it automatically inserts a space. So you don't need it. However, in real life, of course you do. Any other questions? Now I want to add up the ages of Arman and Omar. How do I do this? We had the add function before, right? I want to make use of the add function. Instruct me, tell me what to write in order to add up Arman's and Omar's ages. Please.
I think.
Yes. What do I start with? I'm on a blank line.
Maybe say age.
Say age.
Yes.
Okay, so you want to add a new method.
Yes.
Let's do that. Say age, and it's gonna return this dot age. This part I did it for you. Now, let's do Arman dot say age. Let's put this in console log. You don't have to type these. Console log Omar dot say age. 34 and 30, I get them. Now, how do I add these up? Please. Tell me again. To add to the existing function, the existing add function. Okay, so something like this. Arman dot say age plus Omar dot say age, right? It's already 64. No, but this worked. Okay. Any other ideas? Yes, we had the add function already, right? If I type add, I already see it in the console. So there already is an add operation. So I do add in parentheses Omar.age and Arman.age, right? And it's still going to give me 64. So this also works. I created a new method to get their ages. But in fact, just to get those properties, those behaviors, I don't need them to tell me. I can directly see it. So I can directly do Omar.age, thank you, and Arman.age, and make use of the previous function that I created, the add function, and so that I can add these two numbers up. All right? What happens if I add their names up? Can I add their names? Omar.name and Arman.name? Is it possible? It is possible, in fact. You can add two strings and it will just concatenate them. It will just add them together without a space, unfortunately. So when you have add, it's going to give you the combination of both strings, which is the name of the first person and the name of the second person. All right? Are you with me so far? A question, please. Yeah. Here. Any questions so far? Please. So I could type in the say name method, I could type return. My name is plus this name. This would also work, but then I manually need to log it. If I type this and run this, okay, and say Arman.sayName, this is going to give me the name in the console, but I cannot use this as a variable. So I just want to log it to the console. I then have to use Arman.sayName. This is a little bit confusing because the console is built in a way that whatever you type, it gives you the value of. And if it's a function, it's running it and printing it the value already. So it's a little bit confusing. But the idea is I had to manually log it to the console to get the actual value, return value of the string. And I wanted to do it automatically. So whenever I say name, just access the console directly and print your own name to it. It's like giving a printer to this person. And when I say Arman.sayName, you already get the name. You can differentiate them by the color. Now it's black. Okay? And when I just say return, and when I say Arman.sayName, it's going to be red. This is when you give a string to the console to print, and the black one is when it prints itself, when it's automatically printing. It's a bit confusing. We can talk about it later. But it works both ways. On the one hand, console log is inside the function, inside the class. On the other hand, it is external, and you write it yourself when you're calling it. Any other questions? No. One more.
So yeah, actually it's a lot. Outside of the class, outside of the constructor, then it will be printed automatically, or if you write it in the class, then it will be printed like.
So no, please don't try to understand this. This is a very weird behavior of the browsers only to streamline your development efforts. They automatically print whatever you give them to the console. This is why it's a little bit confusing. The only distinction here is who is doing the printing. Is the person doing the printing, or is the developer doing the printing? If you put it inside the class, it's the person who is doing the printing. And they are accessing something called console. You know, how do you make sure the console is there? Next week when we go to Node.js or another environment, maybe the console will not be there. So it's not a good idea to give that responsibility to the people. You know, they will just tell you what their name is and you can write it down. You can print it yourself as an institution. This is kind of an analogy. But this is just a shorthand. Let's discuss this later. It's nothing that you need to worry about. It just works both ways. Okay. Anything else so far? Does anybody remember what I told you about what we'll create in the class for the coming weeks as well as an application? What did I tell you that we're going to create? Meetup. Perfect. Thank you. I like this. The attention is very high. Cool. Yeah, we're going to create something like a Meetup application. Of course, a very, very small one, right? Don't expect a fancy Meetup clone because we just don't have enough time. But we're going to create a very preliminary version of it. So what are the main classes in that Meetup application? One is the people, like you have people in Meetup, right? What is the other thing? Events, right? So there are two main components of that application. One is the people, the other one are the events. So the people attend the events. And the events have what? What? Locations, dates, what else? Theme, subject, name, description. What else? Sorry? Time, pictures. What else? Attendees, of course. A Meetup, an event has attendees. Without attendees, an event would quite, it would be lonely. It would be kind of pointless. I don't want to say that, but it would be pointless. A question or you need help? All right. But yeah, an event has attendees, and each person can attend multiple events. Right? Hopefully, you're going to come back next week for the second lecture, and every lecture will have multiple attendees. Right? Now we're going to model this in code, because everything we do in code is actually mimicking or modeling real life. Okay, we're kind of modeling people. For example, in real life, a person has a body, hopefully. Again, might have some hair, although some people don't, but they might have. But in our model, we ignored those details because they're not important for us. Currently, what's important for us are the ages and the names. Okay? So this is a stripped down model of reality. Everything that we're going to do in the code will be modeling the real world, taking only certain properties and certain functionality, certain behavior of real life objects and real life classes, and try to model it and the interactions in code which are useful for us. So we have the person class. I'm going to go and create a, let's call it Meetup. Let's not call it an event because it's not like a concert. An event is too generic. A Meetup is an event, but not all events are Meetups, right? Can you kind of make the distinction? A Meetup is an event, but not all events are Meetups. Like a concert is not a Meetup. They are both events though. Concerts are events. Meetups are also events. That's why I don't want to call it events, because that would be too generic. Okay? I'm going to make a Meetup clone. So I'm going to go ahead and call it Meetup. Again, remember, naming is one of the two hard things in computer science. So var Meetup equals, what am I going to type here? Tell me. Class. I put curly brackets, and I'm going to add a constructor function, okay? Because I will be constructing meetups. For now, for the sake of simplicity, and this is going to be your homework, for the sake of simplicity, let's just say this meetup has only a name. And I'm going to do the same thing with the person. I'll just type this name equals name so that I record the name of the meetup. How do I create a new instance from this meetup? Let's call it WTM B, Women Tech Makers Berlin, equals, what am I going to type here? New meetup, yes. New meetup, parentheses. What am I going to type in the parentheses? Name. What is the name? The name is Women Tech Makers Berlin. Okay? And I can run this. Let me clear up the previous console logs because they are printing some stuff to the console. I don't want them. And run this. And let's say console log WTMB. Here is the meetup class. Okay, I run it and I get the output. The output is a meetup. If you remember, in the previous output, I was seeing person. Now the browser or the JavaScript engine already knows if this is a person or a meetup. This is a great start. Let's add Arman to the log. And when I run this code, first I see the meetup on the left, and on the right I see the person. Okay? Does it make sense so far? We created two categories of objects, two types of objects, two classes of objects. Okay? Two standards of objects. One is the person that has a name and an age. The other one is a meetup that has a name only. Now, ideally, Arman should attend this meetup, right? Otherwise, it's going to be lonely. It's going to be a lonely event, right? In my ideal scenario, what I want to type or what I want to make happen is that I will type Arman.attend, and I'm going to give WTMB as the parameter. Does this line make sense to you? Arman.attend WTMB. What would this do? If I run this, it's going to give me an error because I haven't defined this yet. But just read it out loud. Please raise your hand to read it out loud. I will just ask you to read it. This is not a trick question again. Anybody can do this. Please raise your hand. Yeah, please. Yes. Exactly. It reads as Arman.attend WTMB. It's already a sentence on its own, right? Arman.attend. What I'm doing here is I'm instructing Arman to attend to WTMB. I'm saying, hey Arman, go and attend this meetup, right? Normally, what happens when you click I'm attending on the meetup page, on the actual web page? What happens when you say I'm attending this meetup? You get a confirmation, right? Your name appears on the attendees list, and let's jump a day forward, and WTMB appears in your list of attended meetups, right? You see that you attended it, and you already have a history. If you have attended any meetups before, you have a history of it in the web page, right? So we're gonna expect this from this function. What this function should do is to make these histories available. It should record this in Arman and say, hey, you attended this, and it should record it in WTMB. Hey, Arman attended you. Okay? Does it kind of make sense? Perfect. Now, then let's go ahead and implement this this attend method. It's going to be a method inside the what class? Which class should I write this attend method in? Meetup? So do the meetups attend people? No. This should be in the person class. Because people are attending to meetups, right? I'm gonna scroll up to the person class that you see here. Hopefully you didn't delete your history. I'm gonna add a new function, attend. And just to test if it works, let's say console log yay. When I run it, I see yay. Okay, that means I'm calling this method. Now, if you remember, I was passing WTMB, the meetup that Arman should attend to, okay? And that will be an argument here. Let's call it meetup. Attend takes an argument, and that's the meetup. And let's also log it to the console. When I run this, you will see I log the message yay, and I also log the meetup. Okay? Does it make sense? I'm passing the WTMB meetup to Arman to attend. Now, did Arman attend this yet? No. He's just saying, yay, WTMB, right? But that's not really attending. There has to be a history of attended meetups, right? Let's for now assume that you can only attend to one meetup. How would we save this in Arman? How would we say, hey, I really attended that meetup, and so I'm saving this in my class so that you can reference it later. Now Arman is attending a meetup, and I'm expecting Arman to save this. How do I do that? Tell me. The confirmation will come later. First, let's say first Arman is actually attending it. Like giving him a name. Yes? This dot what? What am I going to type here? Meetup, perfect, equals meetup. Yes, it's very straightforward. Now Arman has a meetup. Let's remove this console log. And I said, hey Arman, attend WTMB, okay? And now log Arman again. Console log Arman. Now if you go to the details of Arman in the console, you will see that he has recorded that meetup. Okay? Does it make sense? I type, the attend method is here. Attend meetup, this meetup equals meetup. So I just saved it. Alright? Does it make sense? It does, kind of, right? Let's move forward and ask Omar to attend it as well. Omar, attend WTMB. And let's also, while we're at it, ask Anya to attend. Okay? When I run this, I get an error. Anya.attend is not a function. So apparently Arman and Omar was able to attend this meetup, but Anya couldn't. Can you tell me why? Anya doesn't have this method defined in her. Why? Type Anya to the console. What do you get? An object. That's not an instance of the person class. We defined Anya as an object, but not created her as a person, right? How do I solve this? Var Anna equals new person and then age. Now can Anna attend the meetup? Let's run this, and apparently she could. If I type Anna to the console again, I can see that she has this meetup as well. Perfect, right? Now all the people can attend the meetup. Isn't that great? That is great. However, does the meetup know who is attending to it? No, right? When I type meetup or when I type WTMB, I just get its name. So in fact, although Omar, Arman, and Anya can claim that they attended this meetup, the meetup, no, I have no records of it. I don't remember. It didn't happen. And this is very stupid, right? We should fix this. What should happen? Whenever I'm attending a meetup, right? A meetup should also keep a record of me. Right? Let's go to the meetup class. It had a constructor that had a name, right? Let's add another property called, this time called attendee, or let's say attendees, because obviously multiple people can attend, right? This dot attendees. This time I'm gonna say equals null, which is a special keyword in JavaScript to mean nothing, but it's just what it is. Null is an empty object, like it's nothing. It's literally nothing, because whenever you create a meetup, there are no attendees in the beginning, right? So when I run this code and when I log Arman, already you can see the meetup has the attendees property, and that's currently null because the meetup doesn't save who is attending to it yet. It just has that attendees property, but nobody is filling that property. Do I make sense? Now let's change the attend function, the attend method, and make sure the meetup can record the attendee as well, the attendees as well. What am I gonna do? What do I need to type here to make this happen? Raise your hand and tell me. Save function? Yes? In the meetup, there should be a save function. Let's be a little bit brief and write whatever we're going to write in the save function here. The name of the attendees. We need to save somehow the attendees, right? How are we going to do it? Tell me. In a variable, storing it in the meetup. We actually do it. We have something called attendees in the meetup. I just need to fill this up, right? Because currently, even if I'm attending, it's still null. What I do is the following. Meetup.attendees equals what? What am I going to type here? More. Please raise your hand. Not you, someone else. Raise your hand and tell me what I need to type here to save myself to that meetup. Raise your hand. Person. If I type person, like with a capital P, like this. Any other ideas? Tell me what I need to write here. Nobody? Please, come on. It's okay. You can say anything. This dot name. That's very good. Let's try that. This dot name. What will this do? This will basically, let's run this. And, oh, it saved attendees Anna. Why is that? because I'm overwriting who is attending, and it's only saving the name, right? Maybe Ed. We're gonna get to there in the next second. But it's just saving the name. This means I only have the name of that person. I don't actually know who that person is. It could be any Anna, right? I don't know who specifically that Anna is. How do I change this in order to identify exactly who is attending this meetup? It's very simple. And we're not going to write anything. In fact, we're going to delete some stuff, please. Exactly. It's as simple as this. Pun intended. You say meetup.attendees equals this. For now, every meetup can have a single attendee. When I run this code, you will see that the meetup actually now stores the real person. See, it's not a name anymore. It's the real person who has a name, an age, and in fact a meetup, because Anya attended this meetup. So I can go deeper, go to attendees. This is Anya's object. Go to meetup, go to attendees, go to meetup, go to attendees. This is going infinitely because there is a circular reference here. This is called a circular reference. Anya is referring to the meetup, and the meetup is referring back to Anya. Right? Please. Here or here? So in fact, what I can type here is arman.meetup.attendees.meetup.attendees, and I can still know. Because, you know, if as a person I attended a meetup, that meetup has a lot of people, it will in a second, and those people have meetups in their past, and they have those people as well. If you think about the web page, meetup.com, oh, what happened? If you think about the web page, meetup.com, you can do this, right? Go to the history of the meetups that you attended, click the names of the meetups, you can see who attended those meetups, right? Click those names, you can see the meetups they attended. Click the first name, which is another meetup, you can see who is in that meetup, right? So this is in fact a very good estimation of this pattern on the web page already, right? The only thing that we need to do is we need to make this into a list. No, I'm referring to the instance. I'm referring to that person there. Because Anna was the last one to attend. If I look at here, if I change the order, and if Omar is the last one to attend, and if I run this, you will see that the meetup recorded Omar. Because currently it's just recording the last one. And I'm going to turn this into a list. Now, please watch carefully. You don't need to type. And since hopefully we're going to have the recording of this, you can watch this after we're done and copy it. Now, the attendees is actually, it's not nothing. It's a list, right? It's just an empty list. In JavaScript, the lists are called arrays. And we denote them with square brackets. And in fact, attendees is an empty array. All right? I will also go and change the person class. I will say when I create a person as a new person, they also have meetups. Not a meetup, but meetups. And it's also a list, right? It's an empty list. And when I'm attending a meetup, what I'm doing is I'm changing my meetups and I'm pushing a new instance of a meetup to that list, to the meetups list, okay? we do this by this special function called push. Every list has functions on their own, and we use the push function here. We say this.meetups.push meetup. And obviously, I'm going to do the same for the meetup as well. What am I going to type here? Push. In parentheses, what am I going to type? Name, meetup, or person, or this. Yes, I want to record myself, right? And myself is actually this. So what I'm doing here is I'm saving the meetup to my list of meetups, and I'm saving myself to the list of attendees in the meetup. All right? Now let's run this. Great. Now you see meetups is an array with a single element in Arman. You see the 0th one because unfortunately in programming counting starts from 0. The list starts from 0, so the first element is it has index 0. And that meetup has 3 people in it. See? 3 different people. When I expand it, I see Arman, Anna, and Omar attended that meetup. Right? When I type WTMB to the console, I see it's a meetup that has 3 attendees. It's just, isn't it like magic? Like we kind of replicated this functionality of saving who went to what meetup in code in a couple of minutes, right? In JavaScript. And you know, let's imagine that I'm clicking the details of the WTMB meetup. I'm seeing whoever attended it. I'm interested in Anna. Oh, let's see what other meetups Anna attended. I go to her details and see, oh, she only attended to 1 meetup. I go to that meetup. Oh, and I see that's the Women Take Makers Berlin meetup. All right? Does it make sense? Question, please. Yes. Yes. Let me close the console. Oh, no. This is the console of the console, meta console. Let me close the console so that we can focus on the code a little bit more. So I said person is a class that has a name and an age and a list of meetups that they have visited. All right? Currently, obviously, when you create a new person, they haven't visited any meetups yet. Right? So the list of meetups is actually empty. That's the same for the meetup class. When you create a new meetup, it has no attendees. The list of attendees is empty, right? Now, the functionality, the behavior is that people can attend meetups. That's why in the person class, we said we have a method called attend. Methods are behavior. So people can attend meetups, right? They are allowed to express this behavior. They can do nothing else in life. They cannot eat, they cannot sleep, they cannot drink, they cannot breathe, they can do nothing but attend meetups, as far as my application is concerned. And I modeled it this way. You know, you are only born to attend meetups. And that's what I do. When I call attend, I'm saying record the meetup that I tell you to attend locally to yourself. Remember it in the future. This will be saved in your list of meetups. And also, by the way, the meetup will also record your existence, right? The meetup will also save you to its list of attendees. This is both ways. Is it called reciprocal? Kind of. You know, it's a bi-directional interaction. This is an interaction. I'm attending a meetup, I'm saving it, and the meetup is also saving me. This is the exact behavior on the meetup.com webpage. And it's as easy as calling the push function of the lists, which is a special function in every list that lets you add new elements to that list. All right? What I do is I create people. Let's make it a little bit more clearer, let's move these over here. So I first create a meetup, Women Tech Makers Berlin, and I create 3 people, Arman, Omar, and Anya. Okay? And I tell all of them to attend to this meetup, right? And they do. When Arman attends the first meetup, the meetup has 0 attendees, right? What do? We push Arman to that array of attendees. When Anya attends the meetup already has 1 attendee, right? And what we do is we push Anya to that list of attendees as well. When we tell Omar to attend the meetup, the same thing happens. Now all of these 3 people attended only 1 meetup, as far as they are concerned, but the meetup has 3 attendees, right? And this is the amount of code we need to write in order to realize this functionality in code. And in fact, what we're going to do in the coming weeks is we're going to build up on this idea of saving attendees to meetups and deleting them, and maybe also sending confirmation. And we're going to expand it. We're going to make sure this records not only in the memory, but also in the database. We're going to have multiple meetups. We're going to have multiple people. And we're going to have multiple events for each meetup. Because this JavaScript class has 9 events, right? And you'll be able to attend them one by one, individually. So, and we'll be able to create new events under meetups. And we're just going to grow this, expand this. But you already see the base. You already see the fundamentals, right? Can you imagine how we're going to roughly get there? We're going to just repeat this pattern over and over again until we get what we want, right? So, today we covered the fundamentals of programming. In fact, with this knowledge, you can model pretty much everything that you can imagine. Everything that you can imagine is an interaction between 2 classes, 2 objects, 2 instances from 2 classes, or 3 or 4, whatever, and lists and saving some properties, right? Name, age, attendees, meetups, name whatever you want. You can create many other examples. And in fact, you can model every single thing. People can stay as people, and then you can have flats. You can have different types of flats. A VG is a kind of a flat. A standalone house is kind of a flat where you can live. People can rent places. Usually you would rent only one place to live, right? But maybe you want to rent more. You can have landlords who are also people who own some places, and certain people can rent some flats from landlords, right? Landlord is a different class though. It's a person, but it's a special person that can own a house. Whenever you own a house, you become a landlord. So if you own a house, you're a landlord. If you don't own a house, you're not a landlord. You're one of us, 3 people. Yeah, it's crazy. So, I know it's very hard to believe, for you as well, but we covered everything that you need to understand to become a programmer. There is nothing else. There is no other concept that you have to get right. If you have classes, if you understand behavior, like say name, attend, whatever, if you can understand this concept of interaction between 2 instances, that's all you need. Everything else will build on top of these. Yes. Yes. The question is there a predetermined list of functions or keywords that I can use? Yes, and then it's already shared on Slack. The JavaScript cheat sheet lists all of them. please go over them and learn what you can do with arrays. And we'll be making use of them and talking about them in the future. Yeah. The order is of course important. You have to define what you're going to use, and as long as you define that, the order becomes unimportant. So therefore, you can first define the person and then the meetup, or you can first define the meetup and then the person. As long as you define that and then do the actions, behavior, then it's fine. So wait, please get your attention to me. I want to make sure that it's super clear to you, once again, that there is no other concept in programming that you have to care about. Obviously, there are a lot of details. Then we're going to talk about those. Like, we're going to teach you how to save these records in a database. But it's still going to be the same functionality. We're still going to have the same classes. We're still going to have the same attend function, right? What's going to change is this line. This line 57 that reads this meetup.push meetup will become something else. That's all. The main functionality will remain the same. We're going to expose this as an API, if you have heard of that term before, that other people can use from the URLs, from the browsers. It's going to be the same. It's going to trigger the same functions. All right? I know it's very hard to believe, and I'm pretty sure these people that are here with us as teaching assistants, Maria and Celia, didn't also believe that last year in the first lecture. But there is nothing else. This is why I'm doing this class. Programming is really this simple. It's just based on the fundamentals of human interaction and human classification that we already do towards nature. And once we get this idea clear in our heads, we can do anything. You can model anything. And in fact, this is the homework. As a homework, I expect you to define, first come up with a project. You can, of course, change it afterwards. It doesn't have to be your final project. But come up with a project idea and identify at least three different classes in that project. So for meetup, it could be person, meetup, and events. There are separate things. Or person, meetup, and location. Right? Because location is also a separate thing. For example, this location is a company that hosts the meetup. A location can host a meetup. A meetup can be hosted by a location. So create three different classes and create at least two different interactions between them. So this is the first interaction that we created. A person can attend a meetup, right? Create at least two different interactions between these three objects. You know, a person can attend a meetup, but a location can host a meetup. A location can host multiple meetups, right? But a meetup can be hosted, hopefully, in only one location, because we couldn't figure out quantum mechanics here. Right? You cannot be at two different places at the same time. Therefore, a meetup can be hosted, an event can be hosted by only one location. So, what do? We do three different objects, three different classes, multiple instances of them, of course, like many people, many events, many locations, and two different interactions between those classes. Okay, is it clear? Is it clear? All right. Do you know how we're going to submit this?
No.
Yes, you'll learn how to use GitHub. If you don't know, I also shared and will share again some introduction tutorials. You'll use GitHub to submit your homeworks, and it will all be on Slack. We'll communicate over Slack. If you have any questions right there, we'll answer. I'm there 7:24, and I really mean it. Like 5 a.m. in the morning, I'm there. I'm going to answer your questions. This is the thing. I do it. Because I want to help you. and submit your homeworks as early as possible so that we can review it and lead you to a better outcome. And if you miss some of the details, we're gonna help you with them. You'll use GitHub to submit your homework, and you'll write them on Slack so that we can review them. And next week, we're gonna start with Node.js, the backend environment that we're gonna build a very similar version of. Okay, and I expect you to also install Node.js on your local machines. And again, the instructions will be shared during the week. All right. This is all for today. So thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the event. I'm looking forward to a very productive 8 weeks, and I hope to create at least 20, 30 engineers out of this group. We're gonna make it. I brought you live examples. I hope to replicate that example further. This only depends on you. If you want to do it, we're gonna make it. And let's meet next week here again. And until then, take care. Thank you.